I'll call to order tonight's regular Board of Education meeting for Monday, August 11th, 2025. Emily, could you perform roll call, please?
Let's see. Mark,
Here.
Brian,
Here.
Tracy,
Here.
Eric. Oh, Eric is absent this evening. Ann,
Here.
Aaron,
Here. I'll verify that we have a quorum present. Would you please rise for the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tracy, would you please read the school board mission statement?
Working together to ensure high levels of learning for all.
Emily, could you verify that public notice was given?
public notice was given to the requesting news media. The agenda was posted in the district buildings and on the district website.
Thank you. Ben, are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
Mr. President, I recommend that we move item 12 before 9, if that is possible.
I would move that we amend the agenda to move agenda item 12 to before agenda item 9, and otherwise approve as published.
Second.
Motion by Ann, seconded by Brian to approve tonight's agenda with the following revision, moving item 12 to proceed before item 9. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. We have no request for public input on tonight's published agenda, and then we'll move now into action item number 12, which allows us to hear about action research projects from our staff members who are pursuing master's degrees. And we'll start with Miranda Flock.
Hello, my name is Miranda Flock, and I work at Irving Perch Elementary. I'm a 4th grade teacher there, and I've served the school district of Onalaska for 14 years, so this is my 14th year. This fall, I will be in my final semester at UW-La Crosse, seeking my master's in reading. And as you all know, the elementary schools are going toward implementing CKLA in the classrooms. And so that has led me to my research question, which is how will implementing CKLA in my 4th grade classroom affect students' reading comprehension and vocabulary acquisition? And so my following hypotheses are that students that are immersed in a knowledge-rich curriculum like CKLA will demonstrate improved reading comprehension and vocabulary acquisition as measured by a reading pre and post survey, student work samples, unit assessments from CKLA, the STAR screener, and anecdotal notes. Let's see. Research from my literature review has made a compelling case for rethinking and enriching literacy instruction in the elementary grades, particularly through vocabulary development and integrated content-rich approaches. Altogether, the literature supports a shift toward integrated literacy instruction that simultaneously builds vocabulary, comprehension skills, and background knowledge. Families in my classroom will just be asked to sign a consent form for their child's data to be represented in my research. All students will receive the same instruction whether I was conducting the action research or not. The only addition is implementation of a pre-survey and a post-survey, as well as a vocabulary screener, which is just added. The other assessment tools are part of our assessment matrix and the assessments provided by the CKLA curriculum. Thank you for considering my request.
Team, are there any questions for Miranda?
Questions?
Have you, did you participate in the pilot teachers?
I did not.
Okay.
No, I didn't. So I'm looking forward to going full throttle this semester or this school year. I teach with Emily McCallum. We're on the same team, and so she piloted. So she shared.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
It'll
yeah.
I
It'll be great.
think you'll get good data
Yes,
out of
yes.
that, so that's
Looking
exciting.
forward to it.
Any other questions for Miranda? Okay.
Oh,
I think we can do these in bulk if we
Okay.
we take all the presentations at once, right? So,
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to welcome Emily to present her research project.
Hi, my name is Emily McCallum. I'm also a fourth grade teacher at Irving Perch. And I am also going through the same program as Miranda and Rachel. I will complete my master's this December, and then I'll go to an additional semester to get my reading teacher license and my reading specialist license in the spring. And the question that I am hoping to research this semester also has to do with the implementation of CKLA. And my question is, how will the implementation of the new ELA resource, CKLA, affect students' self-perceptions as readers and their reading comprehension? And within my hypothesis, I believe that implementing this knowledge-based curriculum will improve students' self-perception and also will improve their reading comprehension. We all did a lot of literature review over the summer, and I found in my review that there is a strong correlation between students' self-perception, that includes their motivation to read and the value that they see in reading, and their engagement. There's a strong correlation between their perception and their reading comprehension. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those go together in my own classroom. Similar to Miranda, there's not much that my students will be asked to do that's not what we would already do in our classroom. So when I receive consent from parents, I would implement our FastBridge assessment, which we already give. It's part of our assessment matrix. I would give the CKLA unit assessments, and I think my additional assessments would be to give a survey at the beginning and end of their self-perception of reading, which I submitted a copy to you of that. It uses a Likert scale from 4 to 1, just a quick survey to see how they perceive themselves as readers. So yes, we're planning, we have to submit this approval to the board at UW La Crosse, and then we would, once we get their approval as well, we would give the consent forms to parents and begin the process this semester. So I think that's all I have to say.
So, as mentioned, you've already piloted and had the opportunity to teach a part of this.
Yes, I was the fourth grade representative for the CKLA pilot at Perch, and I will be the fourth grade ELA lead at Perch this upcoming school year. So, kind of doing all the things at
Yeah,
once.
That's pretty fantastic. I've heard very good things about the program, so it's good to see that you want to continue and kind of prove the hypothesis of reading comprehension and improvement. So appreciate both of you taking the time to do that extra work to see the impact.
Thank you.
Tim, any other questions? Thank you, Emily. And we'll now move to Rachel Lopez from the middle school.
Hi, I'm Rachel Lopez. I teach 8th grade ELA at the middle school. I am in the same program at UWL as the two speakers previous. This is my last semester in the program, and my action research is focused on not my classroom students, but my topper time students. So this is like our middle school study hall intervention time. I will be working with a 7th grade intervention class and an 8th grade intervention group during our study hall times. So I'm going to be doing my research with both of those groups. Both groups will receive the same instruction as they would normally. This is just giving permission for me to collect the data and report on it. My hypothesis is that dual modality reading, so audio assisted reading listening to a book while also reading at the same time will improve comprehension, vocabulary acquisition, and self-perception as readers. I'm going to use a lot of the same data collection tools as were discussed earlier, such as FastBridge, STAR data, in class, regular, just like, I don't know, like check-ins as we go through our program. I have some teacher-created assessments that I'll be using for vocabulary and comprehension as well throughout the process. Because I teach 8th grade, the IRB at UWL requires student assent and parent consent, so my students will need to be informed before any of the instruction begins that I'll be collecting data from them. But like I said, the instruction won't change whether or not they provide assent to the program. So, any questions?
I just have a general question.
Yeah.
So with all three groups, the students are going to learn the same curriculum regardless, correct?
Yes.
Are you basing any of the feedback that you're getting on any like previous data, like that you're aware of elsewhere, like some national average or something, or like what are you comparing this to?
So the students that will be assigned to my topper times are students that are in the lower quartile of the like overall STAR assessment data. So if they're below the 25th percentile, that's how they would be assigned to my topper time. Does that answer your question?
No, that's okay.
Can I clarify
You're
better?
doing some pre-test and post, you'll do some pre-assessment and
Oh,
post-assessment.
right,
Correct,
yes.
on the,
Yes.
on your,
On my vocabulary, comprehension, and a self-perception. So there's like a self-perception survey that they'll do at the beginning, and then I have just like a standard passage that students will read, and it will analyze their comprehension abilities at the beginning, and then that'll be re-administered at the end.
So when all three of you are done, would you come back and present what you found?
Sure.
Certainly.
Yeah.
That would be in December.
Oh,
Yeah, all good. I think that's been a great practice, you know, I think when we have, you know, graduate, you know, studies happening, right, it's always interesting to understand what you've learned, and then hopefully that information, what you learn, will be transferred to other teachers around the district and so forth as well. And I was gonna mention just kudos to the three of you. I know what it's like, and I think many in this room know what it's like to go to graduate school, working full-time, maybe with families at home. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort. You should feel good about that, be commended for the extra effort that it takes to do that, so.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the 3 action research projects as outlined by Miranda Flock, Emily McCallum, and Rachel Lopez, as
Second.
they discussed and outlined in enclosure 12.
second.
Motion from Tracy, seconded by Brian, to approve the action research projects from Miranda, Emily, and Rachel, as described by the researchers and outlined in enclosures 12. Are there any further questions, team? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion's approved. Okay, team, we'll hold back to our informational and discussion items, and we'll start with building projects update, and we'll start with the high school. Jared.
There's no enclosure tonight, but the update, the question I frequently have been getting is, Jared, will everything be ready for the first day of school? And the answer is, well, no, but not everything has to be ready for the first day of school. Some of the pieces, of course, will continue into November, quite a bit before all of it's done. The key things to think about those outside, if you've come past on Wilson Street, they're hoping to pour the last section of sidewalk very soon, which allows it to then be paved, which will totally change probably the perception and the look of being ready on that side. There's still work to be done on the east side of school. They're starting on the Wilson Street side and working their way south along the stadium to prepare that for the bus pickup in the afternoons. And then starting tomorrow, they're going to be reworking the entrance to the parking lot on the main parking lot to make it wider for easier flow in, easier flow out, particularly during high traffic times. In the building, we expect to hopefully get the main portion of the gym turned back over to us on Saturday this week, just in time for volleyball practice at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. The lower level, where there's 7 classrooms being worked on, we expect to be getting those at different points next week. When I say getting them, where teachers can get into those rooms, that's very similar to what happened in our science area last year, where they got those at the end of the in-service week. And then there's lots of little pieces that'll be finishing also before they move on to the last phase, which is the vocal music area, a special education room, and then finishing the instrumental music area. So there's a lot happening, but there's still a lot to finish.
Thanks, Chair. And middle school.
Over the middle school, similar situation in that not everything will be completely finished before the first day of school, but that's okay. We have a plan in place. In fact, we anticipated we would need a couple of weeks, and so all of our staff have a place to work, and it's pretty much just art and tech ed that we're still waiting on. And so our music spaces are going to be done in a couple of days here, and so our music teachers can get in there. Band has already been in their new space, but choir, orchestra, and general music will get in next week and get set up to start the year. And then we're really just waiting on art and tech ed, and then a few other little odds and ends. And so it'll be a couple of weeks into the school year before art and tech ed is ready, but the space is looking awesome. The tech ed has a wood shop built in with windows you can see into it, and it's got they got lockers in there and all the cool equipment that they didn't have access to last year, and so they're going to be able to do just so many more cool projects than in the past. And art, my favorite thing about the art room is the display case out front in the hallway to put student work out there and rotate through. And so just really, again, just like with every step of the project, very intentional design, both functionally and aesthetically. So if you've driven by lately, you've noticed our landscaping is going in, and so we don't have to pretend that the weeds are our flowers anymore. So beautiful landscaping, that's great. And then just finishing up the site work, the updates to the bus lane and the parking lot, the main parking lot, are pretty much good to go. And so we'll be fully operational. It's just art and tech ed won't be in their new spaces. They'll be where they ended the year last year for a couple of weeks. So things are coming along.
Thank you. All right, next up, I think Sonia's going to start. We have our strategic plan updates on pillars 3 and 4 tonight.
Yeah, so I will start out with Pillar 3, and as you know, this is focused around recruitment, development, and retention of our staff. And to measure success in this pillar, we look at our staff satisfaction through retention rates, the employee engagement survey, and staying competitive with total compensation of salary and benefits. And last fall, we already shared the staff survey, which was very positive. And so this board report is more focused on the 2 other areas of the scorecard related to retention and compensation and benefits. And because this is really the time of year that we can report this out. So I'm not going to go through all the slides in detail. I'm just going to highlight a few. So this first slide here that's up there, so you'll want to follow along on the screens. The first slide is, I want to note the bolded portions on the bottom, as this is a change to our scorecard. Our scorecard previously reported just the lowest salary and the highest teacher salary for compensation ranking. And after brainstorming with our admin team, we found a way to share more of a compared with our norm groups for our certified staff, as well as local district comparisons in a more comprehensive way. So if you want to go to the next slide. This is a reminder that these are the 18 comparative districts that we call our normed group. This group is made up of the districts that are either similar size or close proximity to our district and have either a similar revenue limit to enrollment or similar percentages of students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, or multilingual learners, so comparative to us. The 5 that are listed in purple are our local comparisons as we compete with local districts really for staffing. So on the next slide then, these are really the updates to our scorecards. As I mentioned, we bolded a few just to show that. First, we are now highlighting the local comparison group, not only for teachers, but also for support staff for their wages and staff benefits. And when we combine those three areas, benefits, support staff, as well as teacher, and we compare those to the local districts, we are looking to reach the top two. The teacher comparison ranking to that norm group, those 18 that we referenced, we're looking at more areas than just the lowest and highest. And we are comparing it back to our minimum teacher salary benchmark, so we have kind of comparison. We look at each district's reported salaries from DPI for somebody that has the same degree and same experience. It is kind of hard to compare because each district's compensation salary structure is a little bit different. For example, we pay every 6 credits, where another district might be just a base bachelor's or just a base master's. So with that, it's not always apples to apples, so keep that in mind as we compare these. We've had great movements in all of our areas, especially with the establishment of the minimum benchmarks. There is some volatility in some comparison markers, specifically if you look at the bachelor's degree in at the high end, it's a lower pool of people that we're comparing against. And then the other one that we looked at in changing on our scorecard is our retention rate. We've had a lot of conversations over the time with this. Our goal is 92%, but we realize there are many things that are outside of our control. So we added an adjusted amount. So we still have the overall goal of a 92%, but you'll see in the details that are reported on slides is that we added an adjusted rate, which is still the percentage of employees retained, but we exclude those that are leaving for reasons outside of our control. So relocation, moving to an administrative role with another district, or going back to school for education. They're still within the education realm. Okay. So we have a lot of areas to celebrate that you guys can look into all the details on the slides and in the enclosures at any point, but I did want to highlight a few. First off, the adjustments to the minimum benchmarks allowed us to move in rankings in specific areas, especially to the local districts. We moved from top 3 on teachers to top 1 overall. The addition of longevity pay for our support staff allowed us to increase our average compensation. Just to note, we also monitor some unique positions such as communications, accounting, but since they're small employee groups, we don't necessarily put them in the details, but they are monitored as well to stay in that top 2. The areas we ranked maybe 3rd are only 12 cents and 11 cents off, so we're right there. And then our retention is at an all-time high. Specifically, our teacher retention does not follow state and national narratives. DPI shared a report last spring for 23-24 retention rates, where similar districts had a retention rate of 86%. And you can see ours is at 93, and then if you take the adjusted amount, it's at 98%. So I can't stress how much positive this is, but the results are only successful through the support of the board and all of our employees. I continue to hear from my counterparts on what are we doing in Onalaska. They understand and people know and people talk, but it really is the overall leadership of the district and the staff who here make our school a great place to be.
Sonia, I'm just wondering about the national picture for retention. Do you have any specific comments related to that?
Yeah, so DPI sent out a report, and it's always lagging. So it's 23-24, and what I reported here for us is 24-25. And they break it down by different schools in comparison size. So when I look at a city school district of ours, they were saying at about 86% of districts were retaining their staff. And they look at it based on when people leave. And we in Wisconsin have a resource called WeCan. That's an application system, but you can get a lot of data in there when people are hired and moved from there. So that's where they get most of their reporting from.
And then nationally, is there a trend or?
Well, nationally is more the narrative you hear, from media, and that, teaching is not a great place to be, but obviously at our district it isn't.
Okay, thanks.
I think I'd be remiss if I just didn't, we've talked about this a lot, just kind of being from a committee level and different things. The amount of work that I know you've put into this, but yeah, as an overall team, right? Retention comes from culture, retention comes from, certainly from pay and benefits, but it's nice to see that regrettable attrition concept be woven in as well, right? Kind of taking out retirees and those types of things. Just really good work, as always. But I think everybody at the table owns a piece of this, right? Which is really important that we all see it that way. But great to see that report. Thank you. Tim, any other questions for Sonia? Okay.
All right, so we'll move on to finance, facilities, and operations. And as I've told you before, in this area, if we're doing our work well, it's kind of invisible. It's below the surface, and the role is to support all of the other work that's occurring throughout the organization. This information was presented to you before in early spring, so I'm going to fly through it quickly because it's just recapping it now that the year is done, but there's no new information here because our survey results and our data came in earlier. So it may look like this is off where we've got a number in 24-25 for the operations experience survey results and not in the information regarding comparing our district to the top 5, and that's because that data lags a year behind. So we will be showing that for the next year, but as you can see, over the years, we're improving in each of these areas. So one of the things that looking at that return on investment, so making sure that every dollar that we invest the smallest amount of dollar to get the greatest amount of return. And again, with these districts that Sonia outlined earlier, looking at this data on a year-to-year basis, and you can see we've got 2 years worth of data now. And you'll see that in the 22-23 column, we've got some areas where there's a green shading, but there's not green shading elsewhere. That's the districts that were ahead of us last year. And this year, we moved our position. So we improved from the top 6 to the top 4. Our goal was to be in the top 5. So 1 year before the end, we've met that goal. So now, obviously, for the next year, our work will be improving that. And it's really going to be fun to see with the work that is being done on the instructional side, with our new resources and our different things along that. We're going to be investing a considerable amount of money, and we may dip a little bit because you just have that implementation dip. But in the long term, we expect to see some really good investment on here. So this one is looking at the operational investment, and again, operational, that's funds 10 through 27, which we'll be reporting on in the finances in just a little bit. So basically 10 and 27, and then just all of the operational expenses that go into that. Then taking that same data and narrowing the focus just a little bit more in the actual instructional investment. So this is classroom investment into our teachers and all of the things that are directly involved with the students. We improved our score here from the top 6 to the top 5. So once again, we met our overall goal for this strategic plan period. And you can see the district that River Falls, where they've got 1 green. We were behind them last year. This year we moved ahead of them. But that's looking at scorecard data that I did that analysis on, and what I thought would be good for you to also see is taking that scorecard data and looking at it 2 ways, both in growth and in achievement. And you're not going to be able to see all of the names on here. That's not the intent. The intent is for you to see how that purple line is moving up. That's exactly what we want to see. And again, this just goes to highlight the great work that the team is doing to move the needle on both results from an achievement perspective and a growth perspective. So with that, that's kind of recapping on Pillar 4. If there are any questions for Sonia or myself?
I was just curious. So like this information that you have here, you know, we're comparing ourselves to the others. I mean, that's awesome that we're like going up. My question is, do we know specifics about some of these other districts that are in the 90s? Like, I was just curious, like, when you get this information, do they give you any details, or is all
No, well, I think you would see, look at the districts, Whitefish Bay, Cedarburg. What's different about them than us?
Yeah, they're small, aren't they?
No,
bigger?
it's poverty. It's, you know, like where their poverty percent. So when our comparables were drawn up, we looked at 2 out of 5 benchmarks. So Sonia, you
Yep.
maybe can go over the
So we looked
benchmarks a
at
little more.
2 out of the 5 benchmarks. They were enrollment, and when we established these, this was at the start of the strategic plan, so a lot of things can change, but it was enrollment in 21-22, revenue limit to enrollment, percentage of students with disabilities, percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged, and percentage of multilingual learners. So they had to hit at least 2 out of the 5. These comparative groups are, if you look at our website and click on the scorecard and you click on the normed districts, it actually pulls up the spreadsheet and tells you which biomarkers, I guess, in essence, are we comparing against.
And what the staff shared with me is when these were established, we wondered like, well, does it make sense to compare ourselves to a Whitefish Bay? We're alike them, but yet very different. And we said yes, because it's a stretch goal for us. It's something that we should be striving towards.
And the evidence shows that we are moving on up.
We're
So
moving on up, yes.
congratulations to all the work
Yes, I
that's
mean,
been put in for that. Thank you, Janet.
Any other questions or comments? The one thing that strikes out, to me is, as we continue to improve, right, the passion for continuous improvement has to grow, right, within itself, right? So the rocks get harder to find that we need to turn over, right? And we just have to have a passion for doing that in order to, like, maintain and continue to grow together. So, again, thank you for the report. And I think it's really important that we continue to look at a diverse cross-section, right, like we're doing. So appreciate that. Okay, if there's no other questions, Janet will stay with you then for the fourth quarter financial report.
So the quarterly report, we've gone through these on a regular basis, and at this point in the year, we're looking at a preliminary peek on how did we close out the year. So we are in audit right now, so these are unaudited figures that you will be provided, but it gives it'll be pretty close. The changes that we'll have moving forward are relatively small. So thinking of this again, when we say the operating funds, remember that's Fund 10 and 27. So those are the funds that every district has, regardless of the different programs, so that it really is trying to do the best that we can do to compare ourselves to others. So one of the things that's interesting to look at as we look at these reports through the year, I'm reporting this data on a cash flow basis. And this is the time of the year when you really can see that difference between kind of what we do as we get ready for audit is change this to an accrual basis. So basically everything that we're required to pay out, everything that we're yet to receive, but we finished the year in June and we've got a long ways to go yet. So as an example, we have $7.8 million worth of taxes that are applied to this year that we haven't yet received. We have another $700,000 in grants, because with grants, with the federal funds in the state, you have to spend the money, then you request reimbursement for it. So we have to have funds in advance basically through fund balance and cash flow to make the expenditures, and then we get reimbursed on the backside. But in addition to that, we do lag in some payments as well, because our teachers have been given the opportunity to receive their checks over the summer, even though they earned all of that money by the time the school lets out. We give each teacher the option do you want to get your paychecks paid all through the year? Or do you prefer to also have your checks in the summertime? So those that prefer to have their checks in the summertime, we have July and August checks that haven't been paid out yet. So we have about $3.1 million as of June 30th that hasn't gone out the door yet. So you can kind of see how that shakes. And then the lighter colors on this graph are last year's numbers. The expenses are on the top, and the darker colors are this year's. And so what you should expect to be seeing and looking for is our schools are very cyclical. And when they're off on a month-by-month basis, why is that? And oftentimes what it is, it's a 3 payroll. 1 month, there are 3 payrolls might have been in March, and the next time it's in April. And we had that this year, that we had 3 payrolls last year in September. This year it was in August. And then this year we had 3 payrolls in January. Last year it was in March. So you can see those are off there, but then they kind of start to true up again after that. Then always starting out like with our budget, where are we at? Where does our money come from? And as you can see, 86% of our budget comes from both state revenue and local. Most of that state revenue is in equalization aid. That'll be a challenge this next year when there has been no money put into the equalization aid. And you remember the revenue limit formula, revenue limit minus state aid equals local taxes. So that no increase in that will be problematic for us for this next year. But you can see, just a better idea here of what that percent is. Then when we're looking at our revenue, what we're hoping to see is that our revenues came in a little ahead of budget. And you can see when you look at the bottom line, we're at 100.1% of our revenues. When you look at the percent columns, so the percent of budget is comparing budget to actual for each of those line items. And then the yearly activity variance is comparing last year's activities to this year's activity. So you can see in that federal revenue, seeing that going way down, that's ESSER, remember that. And then in other financing scenarios, that's an E-rate that we had last year, that just reimbursement from E-rate. You can see that our local revenue is up significantly because we're relying more on local taxes, but interest income is also a part of that. So then looking at our expenses by object, you can see by far the largest section of this is salaries and wages and employee benefits, makes up 74%. And then the other really big chunk is purchase services and educational payments. So what's in there are we have off-site 4K partners, so they're not our employees. We pay for them, but it is instruction. We have all of our voucher payments are in that category, and then transportation, contracted education for our students who are served elsewhere. So with our Honor Pals program, we're hoping to bring some of that back in-house. Those are the major ones that are in that line item. Then looking at how we expend our budget by object, what we're hoping to see here is that we've underspent the budget, and we have done that this year at 97.7%. And you can see the yearly activities. So while we went up close to $2 million in actual expenditures made, we were able to stay under budget by about 98%. You can see here that the bigger area, one of the bigger areas that kind of is probably going to draw your attention, if you look in that capital project line, you look at the budget last year compared to the budget this year. Remember, we had that 3-year Eagle Bluff boiler project. We won't be talking about that anymore. After this year, that'll be off the books because that's been a comparison year over year, and it's been skewing our financials for quite some time. But you can see that we did spend more in capital objects than what we had budgeted, and one of the things was just some things that needed to be fixed. But then remember, we approved that pole vault pit. That was kind of I wouldn't say last minute, but it was an expenditure that we approved that we hadn't budgeted for. Then looking at our expenses by function, remember we always want to look at our functions two ways, kind of the what and the what for. And then you'll see here that instruction, if you take instruction, co-curricular activities, and student services, these are all things that are directly working with our students. That's 67% of our budget. And business administration, the largest section in there is transportation and utilities. So those are the biggest slices of the pie there. Then looking at, again, you're going to see the same percentages as a bottom line, that 97.7%. As well as the activity variance is the same, but just looking at the data a little bit differently. The thing to point out here is in budget, the co-curricular budget went down. The reason for that is last year we had that Boys and Girls Club grant, and we were required to code that in the 23-24 year in the co-curricular area. And now this year, it's in Fund 80. So budget-wise, that's why that budget went down considerably. We did have higher than expected expenditures because we had some pretty big football uniforms and just some bigger things in our co-curricular budget that we replaced this year. And again, the pole vault pit. So looking at our bottom line, what does it look like we're going to be at for the year? Our revenues, as I said, came in a little bit more than what we expected. Our expenses were a little bit less. So conserved funds of about $1 million. That's 1.91% of the budget. And all of the staff are to be thanked for that. That is not the accounting team's work. It is everybody pulling hard to try to make sure that they do the best to conserve the funds. We spend what we need to spend and we don't spend more. And so all of our staff need to be thanked for that because it's their work. It truly is their work, and it's exactly where we want to be moving into the next year because it gives us a little bit of capacity. As you know, we've had our On a Pals project come in over budget. I'm not as worried about that now because I have a funding source to basically cover that overage, and then we'll have obviously inflationary increases too. So it's just exactly where we want to end up. Then our next steps for closing out the year, conduct and finish the audit. Then that audit gets submitted to the Department of Public Instruction, and then our auditors will be here. They're planning to be here on December 8th to go over the financial statements with you. I can report that there were no audit findings of a major consequence that were discovered up to this point. And again, that's thanks to all of our staff for the work that they do to make sure that we are following policy, procedures, and requirements by other organizations so that we can have a clean audit. Is there anything that I can answer now?
Good
Thank
report.
you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We'll now move into action items and item 13, which is the 2025-26 handbooks.
Mr. President and Board, as you can recall, at our last meeting, each principal went through their proposed changes for the handbook. I have received no questions from board members or clarifications that they've wanted. Therefore, I'm asking the board to approve all of the handbooks as previously presented.
Team, we can take these all in one motion. without objection. And so without objection, I would move to approve all the handbooks that are detailed in enclosures 13, the elementary, pre-K, middle school activities, middle school student, co-curricular, staff, and high school activities handbooks.
I'll make a motion to approve the 20, oh,
It's okay, the motion's on the table, I just need a second.
Second.
oh,
Motion by myself and seconded by Ann to approve the 2025-26 handbooks as presented. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And with that, we have our consent agenda. Are there requests for any items to be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration?
Seeing none, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Mark, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. We have no further business.
Mr. President, I think it would be appropriate for us to acknowledge the fact that we have a new principal in the room that was, the board just approved. Kelly, welcome to the team, and it's going to be an honor working with you.
Thank you. I'm very, very excited.
We're gonna name plate
My
for you.
unintentional oversight.
That's okay. Not necessary, all right. Not necessary. No, I'm just very grateful for everyone here who just has helped me grow as a leader, and very grateful to be a part of the Northern Hills family moving forward.
Motion to adjourn.
second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Tracy to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.